All right, let's dive into the psychology of money. Morgan Housel's book, not your typical finance book, is it? You've given me a ton of notes. Looks like we're going way beyond just numbers today.
Definitely. It's about the why behind our money choices, the psychology driving our behavior.
I'm all ears. What kind of aha moments await us in this deep dive? What's going to resonate with our listener?
Imagine a valet parking a Lamborghini for a tech millionaire. You'd think he's got it figured out, right? But Housel tells a story about this valet witnessing the millionaire making some seriously dumb financial decisions, all because of deep-seated insecurities.
Wow, okay, powerful image. Challenging assumptions about wealth, I see. So what's the takeaway there?
Housel's saying our past, even childhood, can have a huge impact on how we handle money. The millionaire might be successful, but his past is still whispering in his ear, leading to bad choices.
So it's like we all have these money scripts running in the background, influencing us without us even realizing it. Yeah. Kind of creepy, huh?
Yeah, it can be. But recognizing those scripts is the first step to taking control. This book pushes you to explore your own money mindset, how your experiences shape your beliefs about wealth and risk.
Like therapy for your finances.
Exactly. And speaking of understanding money, Housel challenges this idea that financial success is about always being right.
Wait, so it's not about picking the winning stocks or timing the market perfectly?
Not necessarily. He uses Warren Buffett as an example, his incredible success. It's from consistently investing for over 70 years, not just from making the right call every time.
So the long game, staying in the game, letting time do its thing.
Exactly. And this is where compounding comes in. Like a snowball effect, small gains over decades can turn into something huge. Think about it, even if Buffett started investing much later, his wealth would be drastically different today. That's the power of time and compounding.
Wow, that puts things in perspective. So patience, discipline, those are key, maybe even more than trying to outsmart the market.
Absolutely. And Housel dives into something else we often overlook saving. Not just saving money, but he compares it to finding hidden energy, increasing efficiency.
Interesting analogy. How does saving equal finding hidden energy?
Think about it. Finding more oil, uncertain, out of our hands. But choosing a fuel-efficient car, guaranteed way to boost your energy efficiency. Same with money focusing on what you control, like saving, that's a guaranteed win.
So instead of chasing higher returns all the time, prioritize becoming more efficient with what we already have.
Exactly. Shifting your mindset from chasing elusive gains to mastering the basics.
Powerful stuff. This book is really pushing us to rethink wealth and success.
You got it. And here's something interesting from the world of blackjack. Housel talks about leaving room for error. Even the best card counters accept they can be wrong. They bet strategically, making sure they can stay in the game even after a loss.
Okay, so we're supposed to invest like a card counter, leaving room for the unexpected. How do we actually do that?
Housel stresses building a margin of safety, having enough cash reserves to handle surprises, market downturns, without panicking and making bad decisions.
Like a financial cushion for life's bumps.
Exactly. Being prepared for the bumps, not just the best case scenario.
This book is going beyond typical financial advice. It's about the human side of money, the psychology behind our choices.
Absolutely. And here's something that might surprise you. Housel actually says you should love your investments.
Love our investments.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like what most financial experts say. Isn't that dangerous?
It might seem counterintuitive, but he argues that being passionate keeps you engaged, even when things get rough. Think about your hobbies. You wouldn't spend hundreds on something you hated, right?
Good point. But how do we balance passion with logic when it comes to investing? I can see getting too attached and making bad decisions.
It's finding that sweet spot. You don't want to ignore logic, but finding investments that genuinely excite you can make a big difference in your commitment and your success in the long run.
So finding investments that match our financial goals and our personal interests. This book is pushing us to be mindful, intentional, not just follow the crowd.
You're getting it. And that brings us to another thing. Pessimism. And how it can warp our financial reality.
Okay, but isn't it important to be aware of risks, potential downsides?
Of course. But Housel reminds us humans are adaptable. Challenges often breed solutions. He uses the example of the oil crisis initially devastating, but it ultimately spurred innovation in energy efficiency and new drilling technologies.
So focusing only on the negatives blinds us to the opportunities, the progress.
Exactly. It's about balance. And speaking of perspectives, Housel argues that narratives, the stories we tell ourselves, play a huge role in shaping our financial reality. Remember the 2009 crisis? The tools for economic success didn't vanish overnight. What changed was the story we told ourselves. Fear took over, leading to a vicious cycle.
So even the fundamentals are sound. A negative narrative can derail everything.
Exactly. And you know what's fascinating? Housel says we often cling to narratives that make us feel good, even when the facts contradict them.
Oh, I can relate to that. Cherry-picking the info that supports what we want to believe. Has our listener ever fallen into that trap, I wonder?
It's more common than you think. And this brings us to a great story Housel shares about author Joseph Heller and a billionaire. Heller's at a party hosted by this billionaire who just made a fortune that year. Another guest, author Kurt Vonnegut, points out to Heller that the host has more money than Heller will ever make in his lifetime.
Ouch. It's got to sting a bit.
Well, Heller had the perfect comeback. He says, yes, but I have something he doesn't have. Enough.
Enough. Such a simple but profound concept. This book is about helping us define what truly matters, recognizing when we have enough.
Exactly. Aligning your financial goals with your values, not just chasing some arbitrary definition of success.
This is thought-provoking. The psychology of money feels as much about self-discovery as it is about finance.
Absolutely. And speaking of self-discovery, we've got to talk about the end of history illusion.
End of history illusion. Sounds deep. What's that all about?
It's the tendency to underestimate how much we change over time. We make long-term financial plans based on our current selves, forgetting our priorities might shift as we evolve. Think about it, your 20-year-old self probably had very different ideas about what a fulfilling life looked like.
Oh, totally. It's like we're constantly evolving, but we make decisions as if our current selves will remain the same forever. How do we navigate this illusion? What does Housel say?
He encourages us to constantly reevaluate our goals, reminds us that changing our minds isn't weakness, it's growth, embracing flexibility in our finances and personally.
So be ready to adjust as we learn and grow, not cling to decisions that no longer serve us.
Has our listener got any financial plans they need to reevaluate? Food for thought.
He also warns us about sunk costs, clinging to past decisions just because of the effort we put in. We've all been there, throwing good money after bad, too stubborn to admit we were wrong. Oh yeah, been there, done that. Don't throw good money after bad, right?
Exactly. Recognizing this tendency can be incredibly freeing when it comes to our finances.
So the psychology of money is about being mindful, introspective about our relationship with money, thinking long-term, prioritizing saving, room for error, and personal fulfillment. It's not just about building wealth, it's about building a life we love.
You nailed it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So many more fascinating stories and ideas to unpack.
Buckle up, listeners. We've got a lot more ground to cover in our deep dive into the psychology of money. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll uncover even more key takeaways from this book.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the psychology of money. We've been talking about how our personal experiences shape our financial decisions. And Housel takes us further with this concept of depression babies.
Depression babies. Okay, so he means people who are actually babies during the Depression.
Yeah, but it's more than that. It's about how living through tough times can really stick with you, affect your financial psychology. Housel says those who lived through the Depression, they often developed a strong aversion to risk. And that stuck with them when making investment choices for decades.
Makes sense. Witnessing economic devastation would definitely make you think twice about taking risks with your money.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that this risk aversion, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It helped those folks navigate financial decisions when things were stable, but it also meant they might have missed opportunities when the markets bounced back.
A double-edged sword. Valuable perspective, but also potentially limiting.
Exactly. It ties into a bigger point Housel makes. Our experiences with money, good or bad, surviving a recession, growing up poor, even seeing high inflation, it all shapes our financial worldview.
We each have our own internal money script, playing out based on our past.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And recognizing those scripts is key to understanding why people make the financial choices they do, even if they seem irrational to others.
I can see how that could lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, especially with couples and money.
Absolutely. Housel stresses that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to personal finance. What works for one person could be a disaster for another, and understanding the psychology behind it all is key.
Makes me think about my own choices, the hidden influences at play. Our listener must be having some aha moments too.
I hope so. Speaking of aha moments, Housel tells this story to illustrate his point. It's about Bill Gates and a surprising bit of luck that played a role in his success.
Okay, what was so lucky about Bill Gates' journey? I'm all ears.
Housel dives into the specifics. He points out that Gates went to one of the only high schools in the world at that time that had a computer terminal. That ignited his passion for coding, led to Microsoft, and the rest is history.
So if Gates hadn't been in that specific environment, things could have been very different. It's almost like fate stepped in.
Exactly. Housel emphasizes that while Gates was obviously talented and hardworking, a good amount of luck played a role. Right place, right time, it makes all the difference.
It's a reminder that success is often a combination of skill and luck. It's not always about working harder or being smarter.
Exactly. He even talks about this guy, Ken Evans, Gates's best friend, a brilliant mind. Sadly, Evans died in a climbing accident before he could reach his full potential.
Sobering reminder that life can be unpredictable. Success isn't guaranteed.
Housel's point is we focus on the success stories and forget the countless people who had the same skills and ambition but didn't get those lucky breaks.
Humbling. It's like there's this element of chance we can't control. So should we just give up and say it's all up to fate?
Not at all. Housel's not saying give up on your goals or stop working hard. He's saying acknowledge the role of chance and don't just attribute success to individual merit.
A balanced perspective, recognizing that success is influenced by choices, circumstances, and even luck.
Precisely. And that leads to an important point, learning from success and failure in the financial world.
What's his take on that?
Housel says be careful about taking lessons from extremes, both positive and negative. Studying billionaires, for instance, might not be that helpful. Their success is often tied to things the average person can't replicate.
So focusing on more common patterns of success and failure is more practical.
Right. He also suggests that failure, it's not always bad. It can be a teacher as long as we learn from our mistakes.
Not being afraid to fail, but failing intelligently, using those experiences to improve.
Exactly. He also points out that the stories we tell ourselves about success and failure can be misleading. Like saying someone's wealth is just from hard work ignores the role of luck. Or blaming someone's financial struggles entirely on bad decisions might overlook external factors they couldn't control.
It's about nuance, recognizing the interplay of choices, circumstances, and, a bit of luck.
Exactly. Now, let's revisit compounding returns. We talked about Warren Buffett earlier. Housel says time is the secret sauce for compounding. He does this thought experiment, imagining what if Buffett started investing later in life.
Interesting. How would that change things?
Housel calculates that if Buffett had started in his 30s, his net worth would be way lower, even with his investment skills. It shows the exponential growth possible with a longer time horizon.
Starting early, letting those investments compound for decades makes a huge difference. It's like planting a tree. The sooner the taller it grows.
Absolutely. And even small differences in yearly returns can have a massive impact over long periods. Housel compares Buffett's returns to Jim Simons, a super successful hedge fund guy. Simons consistently got much higher average annual returns.
So Simons was a better investor than Buffett, at least in terms of yearly returns.
In a way, yes. But here's the thing. Simons didn't start as early as Buffett, so he missed out on those years of compounding. Even with higher average returns, his overall wealth didn't reach Buffett's level.
Fascinating. Time can be more powerful than investment skill when it comes to building wealth.
Exactly. Housel even uses hard drive storage capacity to show how counterintuitive compounding can be.
Okay, hard drives and compounding. I'm listening.
Think about how much storage has increased over the years. The biggest jumps happened relatively recently. Housel points out that from 1950 to 1990, storage increased by a certain amount. But from 1990 to today, it increased by millions of times that amount.
So even though the tech existed for decades, the real breakthrough came later, and it happened way faster than anyone expected.
Exactly. And that's the point. We often underestimate the power of compounding, especially with things like technology or investing.
We think linearly, but compounding works exponentially. Hard to grasp that magnitude of growth over time.
Absolutely. And this is important. When we underestimate compounding, we try to solve problems through other means.
Like what? What kind of things?
Instead of being patient and letting our investments compound, we chase high returns, jump in and out of the market, try to time it perfectly.
Sabotaging our long-term growth by focusing on short-term gains. Impatience wins over the bigger picture.
Exactly. Housel says success in investing isn't always about the highest returns, but about decent returns you can stick with. That's when compounding works its magic.
Consistency, patience, more important than trying to hit home runs with every investment. Slow and steady wins the race, right?
Precisely. But Housel also explores the flip side. What about when people get amazing returns but can't hold on to them? He tells the story of Jesse Livermore, a legendary trader who made a fortune in the 1929 crash but lost it all.
A cautionary tale.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Livermore's downfall. Overconfidence, inability to manage risk. He was obsessed with maximizing gains, forgot about the potential for huge losses.
A reminder that even if you're brilliant, managing risk, preserving capital, that's crucial for long-term success.
Absolutely. Housel contrasts Livermore with Buffett, who's always stressed risk management, avoiding losing your money permanently.
So Buffett's about sustainability, long-term growth, while Livermore was all about maximizing short-term profits, even with high risk.
Spot on. Housel argues that real wealth comes from surviving the ups and downs, not chasing quick wins.
It's about playing the long game, not letting emotions like fear or greed control our decisions.
Exactly, and that brings us to financial planning. Housel says the most important part of any plan is being prepared for it to go wrong.
Wait, that sounds kind of contradictory. How can you plan for your plan to fail?
He acknowledges that the future is uncertain, unexpected things happen, even with the best plans. He uses this analogy of card counting in blackjack.
You mentioned that earlier. What's the connection to financial planning?
Even skilled card counters can't predict every card. They have a system, but they accept that they might lose, so they manage their bets, leave room for error, make sure they can keep playing even after a losing streak.
Margin of safety, not betting everything on one outcome.
Exactly. Housel says the same applies to financial planning. We need to build in some buffer for surprise expenses, market drops, or life changes.
Plan B, Plan C.
Got it. Exactly. And this connects to having a barbelled personality.
Barbelled personality. What does that even mean?
It's Housel's term for the ideal mindset for finance. Being optimistic about the future, but also paranoid about what could stop you from reaching your goals. It's like having a plan A and a plan Z, ready for anything.
Balancing hope with caution. Not naive, but not letting fear paralyze you either.
Exactly. Recognizing both the potential for growth and setbacks and preparing for both.
Too much optimism could lead to risky behavior. Too much pessimism, and you miss opportunities.
Precisely. Housel says this margin of safety idea applies beyond finances too.
Okay, how so? Beyond finances.
He thinks it means having more than you need to survive. Financially, and emotionally. A cushion for unexpected shocks.
A safety net for our finances and our well-being.
You got it. Extra cash can help you weather a financial storm. A supportive network of friends and family, that's emotional resilience for tough times.
Building resilience, adaptability into every part of our lives.
And that connects to Housel's point about financial independence. He says true wealth isn't just money, it's having the freedom to make choices that align with your values without being limited by money.
It's about options, controlling your own destiny.
Exactly. Housel even says the bad investment you can make is in yourself.
What does he mean by that? Investing in yourself.
He means invest in your education, skills, your health. These things pay off throughout life, no matter what the market or economy does.
Investing in your human capital. More earning potential, better career options, overall well-being.
Exactly. He also highlights the importance of investing in your relationships. Strong social connections can offer support, guidance, opportunities that you can't buy.
A holistic view of wealth. It's about way more than just your bank account.
You're right. Now let's talk about another key takeaway. Tails drive everything.
Tails drive everything. What's that about?
Housel uses tails to talk about extreme events, outliers, the unexpected things that have a massive impact. They reshape industries, markets, even our personal lives. He says we underestimate their influence because they don't happen often, but when they do, huge impact.
Like the butterfly effect, a tiny event can trigger a chain reaction with massive consequences.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Housel says we try to predict these tail events, but that's pointless. We should focus on resilience, adaptability, so we can weather the storm when it hits.
Being prepared for the unexpected, even if we don't know exactly what it'll be, like a financial emergency kit.
Exactly. He uses the 2008 financial crisis as an example. Caught a lot of people off guard. But those who had some buffer, diversified investments, and a long-term view, they weathered the storm better.
Margin of safety, not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Being prepared.
Exactly. And that connects to another danger. Overconfidence. Housel says when we're too confident in our predictions or abilities, we underestimate risk, take on more than we can handle.
Humility, recognizing that we don't know everything.
Exactly. He also talks about the role of randomness, chance, in financial outcomes. Even the best investors can be wrong. Sometimes luck plays a big part.
Acknowledging that we don't control everything. Being able to adapt.
You got it. Now let's switch gears. Let's talk about the stories we tell ourselves about the economy of the future.
Okay, how do narratives factor into our financial decisions? I'm interested.
Housel says we often cling to narratives that make us feel good, even when the facts don't add up. He uses the dot-com bubble as an example. Investors convinced themselves that crazy valuations were okay because they believed in the power of the internet.
Caught up in the excitement, the hype, ignoring the warning signs.
Exactly. And this is a bigger point. Emotions often drive our money decisions, even when we think we're being logical. Housel talks about fear and greed, how they can make us do impulsive things we regret later.
It's about recognizing those emotional biases and learning to manage them.
Exactly. He also talks about how narratives can shift over time. He uses the 2009 crisis again. The narrative about the housing market, how stable it was, it just collapsed overnight. Financial panic, economic turmoil.
What seemed like a sure thing one day turned into a disaster.
Exactly. And this shows why it's important to have a long-term view, not get swept up in short-term market swings or emotions.
Stay focused on your goals. Don't let the market noise distract you.
Exactly. Now, let's revisit the end of history illusion we talked about earlier.
Remind me what that is again.
It's about how we underestimate how much we change over time. We make these long-term financial plans based on who we are now, forgetting that our priorities might be totally different later on.
We need to be flexible, adapt as we go.
Exactly. Housel stresses being open to changing our minds, not being scared to abandon old decisions that aren't working anymore.
Growth means constant learning, adaptation.
Right. And he warns about the trap of sunk costs, sticking with bad decisions just because we've already invested time or money.
Throwing good money after bad. Being willing to cut our losses and move on, even if it means admitting we were wrong.
You got it. Now, think about this. Making financial decisions when everyone has different goals, different time horizons, that's a challenge.
I can see how that would complicate things. Give me an example.
Think about the dot-com bubble. Some investors had short-term goals. They were willing to pay huge prices for tech stocks because they were chasing momentum, hype. But investors with longer-term goals, they might have seen those same prices as unsustainable and stayed away.
So the same opportunity can look great to one person and terrible to another, depending on their goals and time frame.
Exactly. Housel says this difference in perspectives can lead to market bubbles where prices get disconnected from reality.
So don't just follow the crowd. Be aware of what other investors are thinking, why they're making certain choices.
Precisely. And this leads to something important. Understanding your risk tolerance. Everyone's different. What feels risky to one person might be totally fine for another.
Know your limits. Don't take on more risk than you can handle, emotionally or financially.
You got it. He also talks about having a plan for when things go wrong. Like a professional poker player, they know they'll lose some hands, but they have a strategy for managing those losses.
A plan for winning and losing.
Exactly, and that connects to diversification. Housel says spreading your investments across different asset classes, that can reduce your risk and smooth out your returns over time.
Not putting all your eggs in one basket. Smart.
Precisely. He also talks about avoiding leverage. It can magnify both your gains and your losses. Think about the housing bubble, people taking on huge debt for homes they couldn't afford, and then disaster when prices crashed.
Use leverage carefully. Understand the risks.
Exactly. Now, this brings us to another key takeaway. Focus on what you can control. A lot of what happens in finance is out of our hands. Markets going up and down, recessions, unexpected events.
So don't try to predict the unpredictable. Focus on what we can influence. Makes sense.
Exactly. He says focus on saving regularly, managing your expenses, investing for the long term. That's where you have the most control. That's how you build a solid foundation.
Taking ownership of your financial decisions, not relying on luck or external factors to make you wealthy.
You got it. One last thing. Housel talks about having a philosophy of money.
Philosophy of money. Interesting. What did that involve?
He says we should all have clear beliefs and principles to guide our financial choices. This philosophy should come from our values, goals, risk tolerance.
A financial compass to navigate all the complexity.
Exactly. He also emphasizes aligning your spending with your values. We often spend on things that don't really matter just because of social pressure or trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Be mindful of your spending. Make sure it reflects what's important to you.
Precisely. He also talks about generosity, giving back. Helping others can bring a sense of purpose that money can't buy.
Wealth has both personal and social dimensions.
You said it. And this brings us to the final key takeaway. Finding contentment and peace of mind. Housel says true wealth isn't just about having money, it's about having enough to live a good life without being stressed or always wanting more.
Finding a balance between financial security and well-being.
Exactly. He emphasizes defining what enough means to you and recognizing when you've reached that point.
Shifting our focus from accumulating more to appreciating what we already have.
You're right. He also talks about gratitude, enjoying the simple things.
Finding joy and contentment in the present, not always chasing future goals.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Housel says this contentment can actually help you make better financial decisions.
How so? How does contentment help with financial decisions?
When you're content, you're less likely to buy impulsively, take unnecessary risks, or compare yourself to others.
So contentment can actually be a tool for building wealth and achieving financial independence. That's an interesting idea.
Precisely. Now, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the psychology of money. But before we go, I wanted to leave you with one last thought.
I'm all ears. What's your parting wisdom?
Housel says the most important lesson from the book is this. Financial success isn't just about numbers, it's about the human element. It's about mastering your own psychology, making choices that match your values, goals, aspirations.
It's not just about managing money, it's about managing ourselves.
Exactly. It's a journey, challenging but rewarding.
Well said. The Psychology of Money sounds like a must-read for anyone who wants to understand not just money, but how our minds work when it comes to money.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating look at the hidden forces that shape our financial decisions, our relationship with wealth, and our search for a fulfilling life.
We've covered so much today. From personal experiences to these bigger historical forces, it seems like everything affects how we think about and interact with money.
It's a complex topic, that's for sure. And as Housel shows us, understanding the psychology of money is key to true financial well-being.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the psychology of money. Hope you've gained some insights and are ready to explore your own relationship with money.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the psychology of money. Ready to wrap things up. What's the focus for part 3?
We've been talking a lot about personal stuff, how our experiences shape our money mindset, but now Housel zooms out a bit. He looks at the historical stuff, the big forces that have shaped how we spend, our consumer habits. Takes us on a trip through the history of the American consumer.
A history lesson on spending. Sounds interesting. Where do we start this financial time travel?
1945, end of World War II. Housel paints this picture of America coming out of the war, millions of soldiers coming home, everyone wondering what's next.
I can imagine lots of uncertainty, anxiety. What happened?
America had this unique problem. The war created a giant economic machine, all about production. Now they had to figure out what to do with all that capacity, all those returning soldiers.
Recipe for chaos, right? All that energy, potential, nowhere to go. Did things fall apart?
Not really. America made a choice, a big one, to encourage the rise of the American consumer.
The American consumer, you mean turning everyone into shoppers? How did they do that?
Yeah, few things happened. They kept interest rates low, made it easy to borrow money, buy stuff. The GI Bill gave returning soldiers education and housing benefits, which also fueled spending.
So basically, they made it easy and attractive to spend.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about economics, it was a cultural shift. America embraced this idea. A good life is a life full of things. Houses, cars, appliances, you name it.
Did it work? Did this strategy achieve what they wanted?
For a while, it looked like a success. Booming economy, lots of jobs, Americans had more money, things were good. Housel says inequality actually went down during this time because the economic gains were spread out more.
So a golden age for the American consumer.
Right.
What happened? Did this utopia last?
Like all good things, it started to unravel. In the 1970s, things got tough. Oil crisis, inflation, interest rates went up, put a strain on the economy.
So the engine driving this consumer boom started to stall.
Exactly, and here's where it gets interesting. Housel says this was a turning point. The economy kept growing, but things became more uneven. And people's expectations, based on that post-war boom, they didn't adjust to this new reality.
So a growing gap between what people expected and what the economy could actually deliver.
Exactly, and that gap, it's been growing ever since. Housel thinks this disconnect between expectations and reality is a big reason for many of the financial and social problems we see today.
So we're still living in the shadow of that post-war consumer boom, even though the economic landscape is totally different now.
That's what Housel suggests. We've gotten used to a level of consumption, a level of material wealth that's just not sustainable for a lot of people.
Trying to force a square peg into a round hole, clinging to an outdated model of success.
And this leads to something else, comparing ourselves to others. Housel says this social comparison is a huge source of financial unhappiness. We see people with bigger houses, fancier cars, lavish vacations, and we feel like we need to keep up.
Social media makes it even worse, right? It's
Yeah.
like a constant stream of everyone else's best moments, their highlight reel.
Exactly. Housel says we need to be more aware of the messages we're absorbing. Focus on defining our own version of success, not trying to meet some external standard that keeps changing.
Finding contentment, gratitude for what we have, not constantly striving for more. Important message, especially today.
Absolutely. And while Housel doesn't offer easy answers, he encourages us to look at our own relationship with money, understand the historical forces that shaped our consumer culture, and make choices that align with our values, our long-term well-being.
So becoming more conscious, more intentional with our financial decisions. Remembering that money is a tool, something we can use to create a meaningful life, not just chase more stuff.
That's it. And I think that's a great point to wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money.
Yeah, I agree. So listeners, if you want to understand not just money, but the forces that shape how we think about money, our relationship with wealth, and how all that ties into living a fulfilling life, The Psychology of Money is a must-read.
It reminds us that financial success isn't just about numbers. It's about understanding the human side of things, making smart choices, and finding that balance between financial security and true contentment.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, haven't we? From our personal experiences to these huge historical trends, it seems like everything plays a role in how we think about and handle money.
It's a fascinating, complex topic. And as Housel shows us, understanding the psychology of money is key to achieving true financial well-being. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the psychology of money.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are inspired to take a closer look at your own relationship with money. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.